Good morning. It's Joyful Hermit. I did do a video yesterday, but I was ill and I decided not to post it. I have a few that I've decided not to post. um, but yesterday, I think I talked some about a couple of other incidents in which I reported, and nothing has been done, and just how frustrating that is. I talked more about the temporal Catholic world and the mystical Catholic world, and how, as a Protestant in the last church I was in, out in another state, I was very loved, and they didn't want me to leave. The reason I moved was because of repeated dreams. And also, my former husband, for 5 years, even after the divorce that he wanted, kept harassing. I think he couldn't stand it that he couldn't control me anymore. And he kept trying, but he was with other women. He eventually remarried, but he just couldn't quite let go. He had quite a temper. It was starting to affect my children's social life. They didn't realize it. I kept it from them, but my eldest daughter's um, 13th birthday, she was going to have an overnight, and several girls said they would come, and then we found I had all this food prepared, and we found out at the end, I think only one girl came. I'm not even sure if she stayed the night, but she said how the other girls decided to boycott it. Um, I found out that a lot of the parents were very concerned about my former husband. Well, he was a school superintendent and always came off to like Child Protective Services like he was Man of the Year, Father of the Year. But I will say, when we had to go to court and everything was going against me, the last few minutes, uh, the judge lectured us as to we were both educated and et cetera, and why couldn't have we gotten along better? And I said how sorry I was, that I had tried very much with my ex-husband, but I said maybe I didn't try enough. I don't know. I was the typical abused wife, feeling guilty, blaming myself over and over. My former husband blew up at the judge, said what a great father he was and how horrible I was, and had this temper outburst that was just a tip of the iceberg of how his temper could be. And the judge just tapped his gavel and said, Ms. So and so and her 3 children may leave. And if you're such a great father, you can certainly afford more child support. He hadn't been paying much. And then he wouldn't even pay all of it a lot of times. And California was so backlogged, it was in California, that, trying to get through their prosecutor was impossible. But so we left, and, the rest is history, as they say. Um, but anyway, it's been a rugged life, but yet very blessed. I had people there in my Lutheran church who understood that I was different, but utilized the differences. And Dr. H and I helped try to locate a kidnapped girl. And we were off in some of what I saw in the interpretation of it, but we learned a great deal through that. We thought it was more symbolic when it was actually I was being shown more the literal. But at least I was able to tell the parents that the girl was upset, but she was alive. And they did find her 2 days later, thankfully. Through all these things, these assignments, I do pray and pray and pray for the person also. And in some other cases, I was more actively able to help. I was able to help a rape victim in the town that I moved to back here. The police department had hired me to help with that. I had helped with a man who had a horrible sinus infection. I could see right through his face into his bones. Now, and also with a man who I was foretold was going to die. Now that I didn't act on fast enough. He did, but I knew then immediately when he keeled over right beside me in a Bible study in this Lutheran church that what I was shown was coming true, and I dashed and called EMS and called his doctor, had, told everybody he's dying, so that they would do what they had to do. Fortunately, that day, an EMS person had happened to stop by the church. He was off duty that day. It all worked out. I went to the hospital. All of this older woman's, the wife's friends were too frazzled, but I went and stayed with him in intensive care when she talked to her daughter and other children. And later and also I knew how to pace my breathing, to get him to pace his breathing. He was not conscious, but I knew how to pray and to breathe steadily and to pray that he would begin to pace his breathing, that his body would pace his breathing with mine. And he started to doing that. And he opened his eyes once and sort of smiled, but closed them again. And he was out of it for, I think, the next 2 days, and then they were able to operate on him. But, and he lived. He lived probably another 10 or 15 years into his 90s. It was wonderful. He later told his daughter that he saw an angel sitting by him at one point. And so anyway, these things can be brought to much good. It has been frustrating for me as a Catholic that rather than being more utilized, I am more set off, was sort of deemed unacceptable. Even these 2 priests also that are still out there that I did report 3 times. Nothing has been done. And one of them had, well, I don't even want to get into the issues, but it involved a family member of mine. It's most painful. And one that I heard and knew directly of situations, witnessed. Anyway, I can't begin to tell you how horrible. But yet I know that his real presence has it all in his providence. I keep reading the book. I'm nearly finished with the biography of Venerable Francis Libermann. And when you read these books of very holy people or different mystics or saints, and it mentions that they suffered or whatever, I don't think we ever quite comprehend that the suffering is minutes, hours, days, weeks, and months of horrific suffering. And that when they said they had detractors, that it can be horrible, horrible upset and nasty things that defy normalcy. I'm thinking of some within the last couple of years and how upsetting. And then the coldness of the rector. And then my need to understand him and understand his own personality and issues. One thing I really like about Venerable Libermann and is his whole take on things in the 1800s. He was well ahead of his time, but he didn't go for the romanticized notions of austerities or of zeal, and he was very loving, very gentle, and patient is something I need. I need more patience. And he tried to understand and to promote that we should be our personalities and temperaments that God gave us. And he did that in his religious order. He allowed those in and understood the variations of personalities. And where I am, I don't know, Dr. H has said in the past that I'm in the wrong group, in the wrong part of the country. Well, he doesn't understand my deep bond with Catholicism. I guess I don't understand it either. At times I think I am still in that abused wife syndrome, that I keep putting up with more and more abuse. But then I also know that I am one who loves the ideal and I love truth. And there's truth all in it, in the church. To live the ideal is something there again, and many don't. And I know I haven't. That's my great challenge. Even now that I am not returning, I have to live that ideal here. I had a phone call this morning from someone who's most caring and keeps me hanging on, and has for years, and with much encouragement. And well, the gardens need me, the lawn needs mowing. I'm going to try to get dressed and at least do that if I possibly can. God bless His real presence in all of you. And last night I had demonic dreams, horrible demonic dreams. And I was in them too. I was part of the demonic aspects. It was horrible. Um, but it tells me that I'm sort of on the right track, trying to forgive, trying to forget, trying to move on and accept and adapt this new existence, even though a lot of it doesn't make sense to me either. And to those who are very rule-oriented Catholics, it wouldn't make sense to them. But I comprehend, I sort of cling to the words of Father Vincent and some of what he said, and also this one who called me this morning. And on the path, and on the stairway to heaven, things aren't always as the world would view. In fact, they're never as really as the world would view it. So we'll try to continue on, at least grip the rail of the stairway to heaven, and at least stay on this step and pray for the courage to and the energy to lift my foot to the next step. Keep going, to keep going. And today's gospel is beautiful. The reading is Samuel, not Samuel, Daniel, having to do with how Susanna was so wrongly accused. If it weren't for Daniel sticking up for her, she would have been stoned to death. Maybe in some ways things haven't changed for women all these times, especially women who have a different spiritual life. This priest had told me about his cousin in Nigeria and how she is misunderstood, but he said he understands her. It only takes one. It only takes one. May I be that one to understand someone out there and to have compassion. May you be that one today to someone. A hermit from Omaha emailed me yesterday and said more and more he realizes that I do have suffering in my life. I know that. I was foretold that by a woman who had inner sight out years ago, before I was Catholic, who told me that I would suffer greatly. She saw me before an altar with a huge chalice before me, and she said this voice told her that I would sip deeply of that chalice, sip deeply of that cup. So it was rather ominous at the time, and yet I knew. And of course, I went to the Lutheran church by myself that day and prayed the words of Jesus. Lord, if it be thy will, take this cup from me, but that not my will be done, but thy will be done. And also I repeated, here I am, Lord, I have come to do your will. But you see in my own life how hard it is. You can have all these messages and all these foretellings, and yet when the suffering comes, it can be most humanly painful, and also very much an occasion of sin for me to try to keep above the sinfulness and the negative thoughts. God bless His real presence in you.